Oh, can anyone hear me? Can I? When someone talk, I'm trying to say my microphone's just stopped.
The recording started, Chair, just for Owen to confirm that the live broadcast has started.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of the Community Planning and Regeneration Committee. First, just a brief statement of the protocols to be followed during this remote meeting. Please note that the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and a recording will be made available for public viewing following the meeting. Can members please, I think someone's sharing their screen if they want to stop. Someone's inadvertently sharing their calendar. That's better, thank you. Can members please mute their microphones throughout the meeting when not speaking? This is important since it helps to ensure the quality of the audio for all present. Your microphone should be switched on when invited to speak and switched off when you have finished speaking. Please use the raise hand button to indicate that you wish to speak at any point. Can I also ask that officers introduce themselves by confirming their name and role before speaking for the first time on any item? And if any members lose connection or have technical issues during the meeting, please let the clerk as soon as possible, either using the chat function within the meeting or by email or phone. Now, one additional thing, today's Armistice Day, so it is my intention at around about 5 to 11 today to have a recess of the meeting so that everyone can mark the silence at 11 o'clock in whatever way is most appropriate to you. So we'll have a 10-minute recess around about 5 to 11 this morning. I will now ask the clerk to carry out a roll call of the elected members participating in today's meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Chris Kane.
Present.
Councillor Scott Farmer.
Present.
Councillor Douglas Dodds.
Present.
Councillor Alistair McPherson.
Yeah.
Councillor Susan McGill.
I'm here.
Councillor Ross Oxborough. No, he doesn't appear to be here, Chair. That's all other members present.
Okay, thank you. Any apologies? So no apologies for us yet. Okay, declarations of interest and declarations of interest. Okay, item 3, there is no urgent business being brought forward by the convener, which takes us on to the minutes.
Convener, sorry, I had my hand up for
apologies,
declarations of interest. I declare an interest in item 16 because I sit on the board of Stirling Community Enterprise and I'm a trustee of Stirling Smith Art Gallery.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McGill. To the minutes then, page 1 through 6 on the agenda. Any problems with 1? Page 1, page 2, page 3. Councillor McGill, your hand is still up. Are you speaking or just, I think we call that a legacy hand? Thank you. Page 4, page 5, or page 6. So the minutes. Okay. To the rolling action log, page 7. Let's just quickly go through them. So CR 102. I'm just going to read the numbers. If anybody wishes to make a comment, please just jump in. CR 111, CR 140, CR 160.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Dodds.
Can I speak about CR 160?
Councillor Dodds.
It's about the City Fibre. It says a joint working group has been established to help the drive in this expansion, which is great. Can I just ask the officer to bear in mind when they work with City Fibre the problems that we had in Bridge of Allen, where City Fibre wouldn't be completed to certain houses because they didn't have a pavement outside their house. Their grass came to the main road. Caused a lot of problems, but eventually they came back and sorted it. So I just hope that the City Fibre have changed where they're going to operate and still be able to install City Fibre to houses that don't have a pavement.
Okay, Steve McDonald, do you want to comment on that?
Thanks, Councillor, and thanks for the question. Steve McDonald, Service Manager, Economic Growth, Culture, Tourism and Events. I don't have the detail on that, but we are meeting and speaking regularly to City Fibre, so I will raise that point, Councillor Dodds, and make sure that's addressed.
Thank you.
I should have said it's exciting to see that news there, that this is being rolled out. I know it'll be welcomed in the eastern villages and in Dunblane. So we've been pushing for this for a while. So it is very exciting to see movement in this direction. And I think everyone in all of these communities will be delighted by the increase in performance that comes from that particular broadband connection. Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Yeah, I've been lobbying for that for several years now since it wasn't rolled out. Steve, can you explain to me, I'm just a wee bit concerned here about the order, you know, I'm not going to read into this too much here. Do they have a priority and they're going to do this? Because I see them, if I was putting together that report, they put the communities in alphabetical order. So is it the plan to do Dunblane first and then Kerry, Flynn, Plain and Frost might get done? And do you know when this is going to be starting? What's going to be starting?
So just to give you an overall update, so I think to give you some reassurance on that list there, it's not in priority of timeline when that would be done. So we had a meeting with City Fibre last week, which was very positive. So they, as part of a business plan, have scoped out the properties that they'd like to include in this expansion, and they've got some headline costs for that now. So there's two kind of next steps to that. First of all, City Fibre are due to take the action plan to their board for approval. I think that's due to go next month, so that will help the project along. It's probably worth noting as well, though, there is likely to be a funding shortfall in the project. So we will, as always, kind of continue to work with City Fibre on that. So we're alive to some of the kind of strategic funding opportunities that are available through both the UK and Scottish governments. And also they're in discussions with both governments, and they've invited us to be part of that as well. So it's not quite kind of sealed and delivered the deal yet. There will be a funding shortfall, I think, to deliver this, but we'll work with them to address that and try and get this project to the line.
Yeah, just very briefly on that, Steve, it mentions in page 8 over the page, it says 8 or 9,000 premises. Now, I wouldn't class households as premises of and I know there's not 8 or 9,000 businesses in Dunblane, Kerry, Flynn, Plain and Frost, but just for the avoidance of doubt, these premises we're talking about houses and households here. It shouldn't be premises, surely.
Yeah, that includes that'll be business and residential properties.
Because it's easy to construe from that or interpret that this is only going to be premises, as in business premises, and you know the households wanting to be getting done. But I'll be keeping a close eye on this, because the concern is that I've no doubt the take up that Vodafone will have done their work, research, and the take up will be bigger in Dunblane, and let's get the funding into there, and there'll be pennies left for us. So it's important here that we have oversight in this committee, that the Eastern Village is not left high and dry, and all the money goes to Dunblane where there'll be a bigger take up. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Sheila, do you wish to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check, are we still on the minutes? Because there isn't any provision for matters arising on the minutes, so we should really just be approving them for accuracy or otherwise at this point.
No, we're on the action log, Sheila. We've approved the minutes.
Right, okay, that's fine, thank you.
So we're on that. I mean, Steve, I mean, I suspect, I think we've noted this when we've talked about this agenda. I think this is going to be news to a few people that it's here. Can you tell me where is this going to F&E for a further discussion? Because obviously these questions that Councillor McPherson are raising are valid, and I think need to be explored, but I'm not necessarily sure the best place to explore them is in our action log when it's a comment. So where is this going?
I don't think we've decided that yet. I think it's a discussion we can have with senior officers. I think it probably has moved on in the last few weeks to a place where we can maybe give a more a proper update through whatever committee, not just through the action log. So I think if you can maybe leave it with us, and we can, over the next few weeks, I think we should be in a clearer position what the kind of key next steps are and what the ask is, so we can inform the most appropriate committee where we take that, but we can advise on that if that's okay.
Yep. Can I ask, please, that you also prepare a briefing note for elected members that goes into this in a bit more detail and answers some of these questions? And if you could prepare that sooner rather than later, please, and circulate that, that would probably answer a lot of these questions. But it's good news. I think this is the first time we've seen this written down anywhere, but I think it just needs some other questions reasonably quickly. Okay, that's CR 160, CR 195, and actually I'm just saying, are we, in terms of CR 160, Do you want to remove it from the log? I'm just thinking this through. No, we'll leave that one on the log for now. We've asked for a briefing note to be put forward, so we'll wait and take it off once that briefing note's been confirmed at the next committee. Right, CR 195, we can just remove that if you're happy as a duplication. CR 198, I'm going to leave in the action log just now, but I note that the briefing is scheduled for next week. CR 199, no further comments in this meeting, but I think we just leave that one there. CR 200, are you happy for that to be removed or marked as complete? Okay, there's a yes. CR 203, are you happy for that one to be marked as complete and removed? CR 211, again, if you're happy, we'll get that noted and removed. CR 22, actually, sorry, apologies, come back. CR 211, there is the last item in CR 211 still has to remain on it. The one about the app. CR 212, are you happy for that to be removed or marked as complete? Okay. CR 213, okay, we can remove that as well. CR 214, I think we leave that one for now. And CR 218, we'll take the first one off, but leave the other two on. If you're comfortable with that, I think that takes us through the action log. Right, which takes us on to item number 6 in the agenda, which is the Community Planning Partnership update. Who wants to introduce this paper?
I'll do that if that's okay, convener. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's Leslie Gallagher, Service Manager at Regeneration and Inclusion Growth. So thank you, convener. This report on the business from the Community Planning Partnership for committee meeting this cycle covers 3 areas. Specifically, the Executive Board's consideration of the role of community planning partnerships in driving local recovery from the pandemic, the partnership coordination of the successful Summer of Play initiative, and finally a summary of the recent work of the Community Justice Partnership. All 3 work streams evidence the strong partnership working through the CPP and the ongoing need to continue to collaborate, to join up at a strategic level and at an operational level in response to the evidence community needs in terms of tackling poverty and inequality. Committee is asked to consider and comment on the contents of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Dodds.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful paper, and thank you very much for putting it together. It's more of a comment than anything else. I see in every section, all the other areas are mentioned in relation to what they've been doing and what they've been achieving. Now, if I was a member of the public and I was looking at this paper, I'd be saying to myself, well, what has Stirling actually achieved? So I would like in the future, if it's possible, and I'm sure you'll either say it is or it isn't, whether that Stirling could be included in the breakdown of each group, just to show actually what we have been doing and what we have done, because I'm sure we've done loads and loads and loads of stuff, which we and the officers need to be commended for, but it'd be nice to see in this paper what we have actually done.
Leslie?
Yes, thanks, Convener. Yes, thanks, Councillor Dodds. You're absolutely right. Unfortunately, with the changing of staff around the lead role for community planning partnership, our contact details weren't included in the ask for evidence for that report to which you refer. So we were a wee bit disappointed, because there is a lot of work that we could have evidenced, but we were missed off the ask. But we have rectified it for future reports. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, Leslie, thank you very much. It's a good report. It's a good update. So I think we can consider and comment, or we've considered, we've not really commented much, but we thank you for the report, and we can now move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the Performance and Strategic Priorities Progress Report. Do we want to introduce this? I think I'm just moving to the agenda page myself. Do you want to introduce it, or just want to move to the comments? I think that we've done an introduction to this.
This is the statutory. This is the statutory paper that comes to each CP&R, and it gives the update on the key performance indicators as laid out for community planning and regeneration. So our officers on the call will be happy to take any questions. Thank you. Sorry, Isabel McKnight, Chief of Operating Officer, Communities and Partnerships.
Thank you, Isabel. Councillor McGill.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies, this is probably going to sound a daft question. I'm still fairly new to this committee, so I'm still not really understanding all the bits and pieces. But the European Social Fund, on, I don't know what page this is on in appendix. So it says there the target's £701,000 and 636. Well, we've never achieved that in the previous year. So firstly, I'm just wondering why are we not achieving that target? Why are we not allocating more funding? And what's going to happen to this? Because obviously this is a European social fund. What's going to happen to this now that we've got Brexit?
Okay, Leslie.
Yes, thanks, Sabrina. Thanks, Councillor McGill. Just to clarify on the European Social Fund, when we say allocated, it's not an allocation that goes to other organisations. It's an allocation that comes from Scottish Government to the local authority. So at the start of the programme, there was a bid made and an allocation of funding to Stirling Council. We then draw down on that allocation based on the programmes that we've got. So as is explained, I think in some of the narrative in the report there, we project the amount of staff that we can match to the programme and how quickly we will get them into employment. Now, obviously, sometimes there are delays in recruitment, or we may not need the staff that we initially looked at. So from our overall projected allocation, it's never quite a match, if you like. But obviously, what we do is make sure that for all of the programmes that we deliver, we claim for every single eligible spend. And we've been fortunate that all of our claims to date have been paid in full. In terms of the future, we don't quite know as yet. We know that there has been an announcement at the UK level of a shared prosperity fund, but there is no significant detail on what that will look like. But as officers, we're monitoring it very regularly so that if there is opportunities, and we're sure there will be for Stirling, we will maximise those. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Okay, anybody else? Leslie, I wonder if I can ask you to just answer a question, the number of skills and employability programmes outcomes delivered. I know that we're still below target, but we are coming out of a pandemic. I wonder if you could just talk to the sort of direction of travel back to a sense of normality with this. How are we getting on with that?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Kane. Yes, you're right. This has been one that we've talked about regularly in committee, and we know it's only one part of the employability provision. Members will note the other performance indicators in the scorecard, which are well above target. The ESF one, we measure outcomes, so there's always a delay. And we also know that we are dealing with a very vulnerable set of client group. We have begun to return to face-to-face provision for our learning and employability programmes where appropriate, obviously suitably risk assessed. That will enable us to support clients who, whilst we have managed to keep in contact with them over the telephone and where possible digitally, it's a difficult position for them to be supported remotely. So for those programmes and for those client groups, we're delighted that we've been able to return to provision. So we are currently looking at provision in Content Community Centre for them Strive to Maximise work. We mentioned that programme specifically, and also a return to the Cowan Centre, hopefully this month, all suitably risk assessed for clients and staff, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask about again, it's a same direction of travel question in terms of the number of resettled or refugee families. The note on page 77, says the programme effectively stalled due to the pandemic. We know we've had the crisis in Afghanistan. I'm just looking for some reassurance that there's no problems there. That's progressing as we would wish it to.
Yes, I can provide you with that assurance, Councillor Kane. It is. We're in regular contact with the Home Office. I believe there's a meeting today.
Thank you. And in terms of the libraries, again, there's a theme to my questions. it's very pleasing to see that the number of library issues appears to be returning to some sort of normality very, very quickly. That's good to see. I note, though, that there is a desire to keep some of the digital activity sessions and also go back to providing in-person sessions. It's probably also a question for Crawford, but just a sense of how are we getting on with that balancing act. It's an exciting time for libraries. The library staff do a remarkable job, but they're having to deal with getting back to normal whilst grabbing the opportunities that the pandemic has shown they have.
Yeah, good morning, Councillor. I can come in on that one. Crawford Bell, excuse me, Community Development Manager, Economic Regeneration Communities, with responsibility for libraries. So yeah, you're correct in your assessment there, Councillor Kane, in terms of the libraries going back to normal, and as the stats show, excuse me, we're almost back to sort of pre-pandemic levels of usage. And we've also, as you said, made great steps to maintain what was a very, very successful digital provision during lockdown. So we're almost in a position where we've got the best of both worlds, and that's really down to the efforts of the staff, as you say. We've got outstanding staff in our libraries and archive service who are passionate about what they do. So yes, very much re-engaged back in communities. Communities clearly value the library service, are coming back through the door. To take your point around about your restrictions, there are still some restrictions in terms of capacity within libraries. As you know, some of our libraries are quite small and single-staffed. There have been no issues raised. We review it on a weekly basis in terms of the ability of the physical space with the continued restrictions that some of the COVID guidelines put on us. But at the moment, we are able to serve and cater for everyone that walks through the door. So we're very pleased in terms of the way things are going, and things are looking very positive. And I would just add that services such as mobile provision and housebound services are back as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Crawford. Any other questions on item 7 of the agenda? No. Okay, item 8, food framework update. Leslie, is this you again?
It is, Convener, thank you. This update on implementation of the food framework reports on the work now underway to re-establish the Stirling Food Partnership, led by Stirling Voluntary Enterprise and Forth Environment Link. The partnership has now met twice, and the progress on the programme plan included as an appendix to this report is on track. The Good Food Fund outlined in the report has now closed for applications. Interest in the fund was very strong. A total of 29 applications to the value of just over £218,000 was received. So some difficult decisions to be made by the decision panel. The decision panel will meet over the next 2 weeks to review and finalise funding awards. The report also provides information on other relevant activity within the wider food system, including the Forth Valley Food and Drink Festival, which ran in October, the Holiday Fun Club activity during October, and Startup Stirling's continuing support for those self-isolating due to the pandemic. Again, happy to take any questions, Convener. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. In terms of the food fund, Leslie, I'm asking sort of generic questions, but I just want to ensure that there was a good geographic mix of applications. Have we managed to get a good number from around the district?
To be absolutely honest with you, Councillor, I haven't had a chance to look at them all yet. I can certainly provide members with detail on that, though.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Dodds.
Thank you. I just want to know how many people are in the panel and where we drawing the panel from to make a decision on relation to the 29 applications. Can you advise me on that, please?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Dodds. We're continuing the successful approach that we used for the Summer of Play work to get a collaborative view. So there's representation from council officers, the third sector and NHS Forth Valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McGill. Councillor McGill. There's a legacy hand or not. Okay. Anyone else? I mean, it's a good report, Leslie. It's good to see that we're we're moving forward. Again, you're going to notice a theme from a lot of my questions this afternoon. We're coming out of the pandemic. We're obviously beginning to get back to into a different gear and a different focus. Are you confident that this is going in that direction? No problems, no issues that's coming up in terms of capacity or just other things other than a problem with the pandemic re-emerging?
Yeah, we've actually added to the capacity internally just recently. There will be a fixed term officer post that will be looking at this work and the sport work, so that's very welcome. I think the partnership with the third sector is very strong, and that's one of the strong legacies of, I think, our response to the pandemic collectively across the council and our partners. That sense of trust and partnership working that we use very significantly at the start of the pandemic has continued and will continue. Interestingly, in the food partnership, their second meeting was held face-to-face. So that's another strong indication that things are getting back to normal where appropriate. The interest in the Good Food Fund, I think, has been absolutely phenomenal. And I think that demonstrates communities' interest in this work, communities' activity in this work, and the importance of the work, both responding at a practical level, but also making sure that we're strategically aligned to developments that are happening regionally and nationally. So yes, I'm confident that this work will continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On Appendix 2 on page 89, this is more of a question for maybe it's Steve McDonald and Leslie, but the food and drink trail, it's good to see that. It's always nice to just sort of zoom out and see exactly how many different options we have for good food if you want to go and have a look around it. And there's certainly a lot of places in that that I've been at and places that I still want to visit. In terms of expanding on that and making sure it's an exhaustive list or people have an opportunity to get involved in it, what's happening there? How are we promoting that?
Hi, I can maybe take that one, Councillor. Steve McDonald, Service Manager, Economic Growth, Culture, Tourism and Events. So yeah, that's been taken forward by the Food and Drink Network, which has been established over the last couple of years and it's got really strong membership. So that got funding. We've got an officer supported through the Leader programme that's taken a lot of that forward, and we do intend to continue to expand that where possible and get as many businesses and attractions involved in that as possible.
Okay, thank you. And if you've not been at the neighbour food market, it's worth a look. You'll buy more than you intended to, but it's certainly worth a look for the neighbour food Stirling, neighbour food Balfron, neighbour food Cullen, and the Bridge of Allen and Stirling Food Hub are on that. Councillor Oxford, welcome. You've got a question as well.
Sorry, there we go. No question for me, Chair. It's just to say hello, let you know I'm here, and apologies for being so late.
No, thank you very much for attendance.
Chair.
Right, okay. Councillor
Chair,
McGill, you're with us.
Yeah, sorry, I had connection problems there. So my question is really how's the ongoing monitoring going to be, and how are you going to ensure that people who are in a position of vulnerability, who may or may not be living in a slightly chaotic lifestyle, are going to benefit from this? Because I see at 2.7.2 you're seeing increased alternative to food banks and food emergencies. So I'm just thinking of a family who may be living in extreme poverty and with issues that maybe makes their life a bit disorganised and chaotic. How are they going to benefit? How are you going to monitor that they're being targeted and able to benefit from this? Thanks.
Okay, Leslie.
Thanks, Councillor McGill. I mean, that's a really complex question. I'll try my best. In terms of the overall monitoring of the food framework, that will happen within the partnership and reported back to this committee. It's a standing item, as you know. In terms of the monitoring of the application specifically for the food fund, every organisation that is awarded will have to complete a monitoring return to the funding panel. Your question around families who are vulnerable is a hugely complex one and covers all of the work of the Community Planning Partnership and all of the services within the council. Specifically in relation to food, it's that really fine balance and complex balance, I think, between an emergency food response, you know, when families are in crisis and they need food. And there are a number of community food organisations who are still active and services who are referring to those food organisations to make sure that that immediate crisis response is resolved. However, it's not a position that we would want families to be in forever and ever. So there is a consultation work out nationally just now around ending food banks, and we're considering that and responding to that. And that is our position locally, is that we want to get to a position where families who are vulnerable are able to support themselves through a variety of means, whether that's employability, whether that's income maximisation, because that's part of our wider tackling poverty response. But what we need to do is to make sure that where there is an emergency need, that is met. But that's not, I don't think, an ongoing position that we would want to see families in. So I'm not sure that totally answers your question, Councillor McGill, but in relation to this framework, that's the work that's underway. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. I totally agree. We should be getting rid of food banks as quickly as possible and giving people dignity with enough food to survive.
Okay, Councillor Oxford, your hand is still up. You got a question? Nope. Okay. Right. So, in terms of considering comment on item 8, I think we've done that. So on to item number 9, the Stirling 2022 report. Is this Stuart Oliver? Is this your one? Or is it Steve? Or Fiona?
I think it's actually myself, convener. Fiona McLean, Culture and Events Manager. So thanks, convener. This detailed report, Stirling 22, updates committee on our plans for 2022, an important year for Stirling, including UK City of Culture bid submission, our planned activities and events to celebrate anniversaries in 2022, and we'll be launching the new cultural strategy. The report includes some examples of our planned programme, linking inter-city of culture bid themes. We'll make the most of our venues, our public and open spaces, engaging people in our communities across Stirling in a range of opportunities. To also add that the key to the programme delivery will be the involvement of our cultural and third sector partners, a wide range of council teams, local businesses and Stirling ambassadors. I ask committee to consider and comment on the plans, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. First of all, I know we've said this at Special Council, but certainly here for Community Planning Regeneration, well done and congratulations to everybody in getting us to this point on the City of Culture bid. We all know that Stirling is going to win. Stirling deserves to win, and Stirling's got everything going for it. But we also know that it was you and the team and other partners who got us to this point. So thank you very much for all the hard work in that. We've got the 200th anniversary of Tartan. We've got the 20th anniversary of the city. We've got the City of Culture bid. Is this going to be spread out throughout the year? Have you sort of talked this up in a particular way?
Yeah, the plan will be to have a programme throughout the year. So hopefully we'll have activities every month. So we've already got some planned for January. So the programme will hopefully be launched very soon. We're just getting the website sorted in the landing page, and we'll just start putting the activities online as soon as they're ready to go on.
And a question that I'm sure will come up, given the 23 councils and the 7 different wards. When we talk about the 20th year of city status, we always come up against that conflict between the city of Stirling and the district of Stirling. What are you doing to ensure that the district can take part in the wider celebration?
Yeah, I think the programme, some of it's linked to the Year of Scotland Stories. We're planning a whole series of community events and working with our local libraries. So I would hope that the programme will most certainly be going out to the rural areas. We also hope in terms of its toll booth, it's the 20 years of the toll booth, so we'll be taking toll booth and tour. So hopefully we'll be out in whether it's Callander or Cullen, maybe even out to Gartmore. So the aim will be to take music and live performance beyond the city.
Okay, I'll now open up for further questions. Councillor Oxborough. Not sure if that hand is up or just isn't coming down. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Oxford.
Sorry, it was up on purpose this time, Chair. Thank
Okay.
you. 2.3 on page 93, you talk about telling stories of our achievement over the last 20 years. I'd be curious to know what achievements did you have in mind?
Sorry, Councillor Roxburgh, I'm just going to the paper. I'm juggling screens.
Sorry, no rush.
I think the achievements over the 20 years, I think there'll be a whole range, whether it's historical, it'll be current, it'll not just be, it'll be Stirling's story, it'll be involving a whole range of organisations, it'll be the people of Stirling telling stories. I think there's many stories to tell, and I don't think we'll narrow that down. I don't think it'll just be us that'll decide what those stories are going to be. So hopefully there'll be some new stories as well Kent stories that'll come out over the year.
Good. I'm glad to hear that your intents involve the people there, because I think stories that perhaps you could call them civic stories that we here might find impressive might be a bit remote to some of the people. So I think it's great to hear that you're planning to involve some members of the public there.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. I'd echo your comments, and I think I'd also add the comment to this that when you ask communities what they want to celebrate over the last 20 years, I think we will be amazed and surprised at just how many things they want to celebrate. And I think one of the great things about Stirling is, you know, for 900 years we've been punctuated by internationally renowned stories, and sometimes the community stories get a little bit lost in that. You know, when you're always talking about William Wallace and the Battle of Stirling Bridge, you forget that what's going on immediately around Stirling Bridge and the Ratbrook and the Cornton. So there is a lot of stories that we can celebrate. I'm already jotting down 3 or 4 from within my ward, and I'm sure Councillor Oxford, you're able to do the same in yours. So it will be exciting to see what the communities come forward with that they wish to put into this rich tapestry of stories that make up Stirling beyond the international focus of the castle and Bannockburn and the Wallace Monument. Councillor Dodds, you want to come in? Oh, sorry, before that, Sheila, are you looking to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just to let you know, Councillor McGill's advised that she's having some technical difficulties. I think she's unable to raise her hand, so she may have a question that she'd like to ask.
Okay, thank you. In that case, Councillor Dodds, then Councillor McGill.
Thank you, Chair. Can I mean, I know I bang on about this all the time, but when we're hoping that people come to Stirling to look at Stirling culture, bids, and what we're doing is great. Tourism, absolutely wonderful. But let's put some hanging baskets up and get some tubs out and get our gardens nice. So when people actually walk around Stirling and take the Stirling in as part of its tourism and historic places, let's have it looking pretty. So can we make sure this year, because we didn't do it last year, and that we make sure that our tubs and our gardens and our borders are looking nice, so when people do walk around they think, well, what a lovely place Stirling is. And unfortunately we're not getting that at the moment, and I don't feel that of Stirling, and I'm sure there's lots of others. So it might not be relevant for this paper, but I've mentioned it, and I just hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears.
I don't think it's relevant for this committee. It's more of an environment and housing one, but I certainly join you with that. I'm more than happy to make that known to the convener of E&H. A nice bit of colour is always nice to see. I would also make a plea, if we're going to do hanging baskets, can we please get some hanging tomatoes and hanging strawberries for them, and not just the flowers? If we're going to go to the effort of putting things there, let's make sure we put things out that people can eat as well as simply admire. I often think when we're planting trees, I don't know why when we plant trees as a culture, we don't plant apple trees first. Go for an apple tree and an oak tree further down the line. Councillor McGill, I think you wanted to come in.
No, that was actually the last agenda item. Just a bit of a delay there. Sorry, thanks.
Sorry, do you want to ask a question on the previous agenda item, or?
No, I asked it, but I'm having difficulty jumping from my phone to my laptop, so I was able to raise my hand on my phone last time. Thanks.
We'll keep watching for you. It's nothing worse than when you're experiencing the technical difficulties. We've all been there many times over the last 18 months. Okay, any other questions on this? Fiona, it's a really good report. It's a really good starting point. I know that this report, in effect, was prepared prior to, or the thinking around this has been around for a couple of years prior to the City of Culture bid. So, you know, even without that City of Culture bid, I think this is quite exciting to see what we're doing. And I think the City of Culture bid is going to give us that additional impetus to expand our ambition to do more. And it's quite exciting to note that 2022 is the 20th anniversary of the city, but 2023 is likely to be the 900th anniversary of the borough. And if you go forward to 2029, it's the 900th anniversary of the Church of the Holy Rood. It's also the 900th anniversary of Stirling High School. So we're starting quite an exciting period for Stirling that starts in 2022. Hopefully has the Year of Culture in 2025, but is beginning a 7 or 8 year period of lots of anniversaries. Are you and the team conscious of this and already making preparations to look at that wider multi-year picture?
We haven't started plans on that yet, but it is on the radar, and we are on a cultural journey. So hopefully that will be included within our plans, Councillor Kane.
Yeah, don't start that now though. Wait till we've got the City of Culture prepared and put in. We'll keep an eye on the ball for that one. Right, so we've considered and commented on 2022. Now I'm conscious it's 17 minutes to 11. We're going to we'll make a start in the next paper, but we may have to continue after the break. So culture and events update report. Who's talking to this one?
That's myself again, so Fiona McLean, Culture and Events Manager. Thank you, Convener. This Culture and Events report provides members with an update on Stirling Council cultural activities and events, Scene Stirling and our cultural partners. Scene Stirling continued to deliver a series of engaging pathways sessions, digital commissions. Cohort had an event and exhibition at the Toll Booth, an engagement event at Bannockburn House, and launched the Climate Change Commissions. Our cultural partners continued to deliver exciting programmes, exhibitions and events, and the detail of that is listed in the report. I'd specifically like to note the launch of Big Noise Fill in September. The culture team delivered a range of creative and innovative projects, as well as Stirling Science Festival, working alongside our partners, including Forth Valley College, University, Codebase and our libraries team. I ask that committee consider and comment on the report, and if there's any comments or questions.
Thank you, Fiona. Can we expand on Big Noise Fill in just a little bit, because I think it is the first committee since we've done it. Councillor Farber and I attended the launch event at Fill in Primary School. It was fantastic. The kids were having great fun. The music was fantastic. Apart from when Councillor Farber picked up a French horn and I picked up a trombone, and then it sort of went downhill quite rapidly at that point. But thankfully, the professionals rescued it. How's that progressing? That's relatively new, but it seems to be quite a sense of excitement and filling over this.
There does, and actually I can't comment. I actually have a catch up with Nicola from Big Noise actually at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and hopefully I'll find out a bit more about Big Noise Fill in then.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson.
Maybe I can help with that then, Fiona. Myself and Councillor Dennis and Councillor Brisler were invited down to Primary a couple of weeks ago, just before the start of COP26. Primary 7s have been doing a project for COP26, a brilliant project, I must say, and the 2 Primary 7 classes, 7M and N, were there, and I was speaking to them about Big Noise and they're absolutely loving it. It's great. It's I think it's long overdue. I think this committee, 2 or 3 years ago, challenged Big Noise and Sistema to take this out to communities like Flynn, so and hopefully it'll reap benefits. I think it's brilliant. I say the kids are loving it, and I look forward to a future cons. I've been invited to a future concert down there. I think it's also important to say as well the stuff that Bannockburn House is doing there. You'll see that a common thread with a lot of these reports of the good work they're doing. And I've got to commend the project manager there and the committee there, the trustees, that are doing a fantastic job, and the link-up stuff they're doing with the culture team is brilliant. And the stuff they're doing in the community as well is excellent. So I've got to commend them for doing that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. They're doing a great job at Bannockburn House. Can we talk about the toll booth? In terms of the 2.28105, that's not the toll booth, it's the Performing Arts Relief Fund that I want to talk about first of all. In terms of musicians and performers that have been, everyone's been hit with the pandemic. Musicians and performers have been particularly hit without their ability to play at an audience. What's your assessment of where we are? The sort of lasting damage that's happened? Are we in a good place to recover quickly with a performance scene?
Yeah, I think our performance programme is almost coming back to normal. The performance, the relief fund has been so important in enabling us early on to have live performances with smaller audiences, but still having the funds to be able to pay for the performers, to be able to bring in the sound engineers, the technicians and the infrastructure. So that fund has been, which came through Creative Scotland, has been incredibly important in supporting the sector. A lot of the events that we're having just now, we have got good numbers. Some of the newer events that have just gone on are maybe a bit slower, so some of them have been carried forward from previous years. But certainly things are picking up. I think audience confidence in attending live events is definitely improving, and it's definitely the picture is improving as I speak.
Okay, sticking with the toll booth for a minute, you've got the youth music record label. We're now releasing records after this. It's about 1980s. Is there not Fiona releasing records, or am I just even too far behind what's
I'm not sure if
now
they're actually physical records, or if they're actually online. I'll get Kenny to send you through. I think it's actually ready to go. I think it's been launched.
Yeah.
So we can send you the files so you can have a listen. And the other one, the EP with artists who'd been working with Roddy Wimble, that's actually been launched this week as well. So there's lots of good music, new music coming out of the toll booth at the moment.
Yeah, I think I am behind it. I think records are cool again. So I just can't keep up. So I can't believe I said I can't keep up. I'm starting to sound like my dad there. Okay, again, just looking through this, I do have some questions. I know there's a hand up. I'm not sure whose hand it is. I can see it. Is anyone wanting to come in?
It's Councillor McPherson's, but I don't know if it's a legacy hand, Chair.
Oh, okay.
Apologies, yeah.
No, thanks, Councillor McPherson. The Stirling Science Festival. I know that was sort of picked up as we were talking about the City of Culture, but that was one thing that was picked up on is great that we've got. This is now in its second year. How is that progressing?
It went really well this year. We managed to have some in-person activities. So we had a day in the Albert Halls with a whole load of our partners, Frog Life and Codebase. The college had science show and workshops, really well attended by local people. I think it was around 400, 500 people came through the doors during the day. And then we had a science festival and workshops at the toll booth as well. So it was great because last year's programme was primarily online, and we did have an online programme as well, but it was great to actually be able to offer some online activities. And the feedback that we've had has been incredibly positive, and folk have said that they're keen to see, it being developed and to grow to become an annual event in the October holidays in Stirling.
Yeah, I think certainly for the Stirling Science Festival, I don't think we knew we missed it until we actually introduced it. I think that has been missing from our programme of events for years, so it's great to see it here, and it's great to see it embedding in. Okay, a couple of more questions just for me. I'm sort of conscious I'm padding this out ever so slightly because I do want to take this recess shortly. But Stirling's Christmas lights 2.36. I note that they're being switched on, but just for complete clarity, we're switching them on, but we're not having a mass family event in King Street for COVID reasons. Am I correct with that? Is that Fiona or is that Steve? Who's most pleased to talk about that?
If Steve's there and Steve wants to answer that, I can answer the simple question, which is no, there won't be an event this year on King Street. We had to make an early decision on that because we didn't know where we were going to be. And I think in the future there will be an opportunity for us to relook at what it is that we do in Stirling to celebrate, our Christmas activities. But Steve might want to add to that.
I don't think I do. I think Fiona's covered it. I don't really think there's anything to add to that. I think we took that call earlier in the year, given where everything was at. So I think that summarises where we are.
Yeah, and I think it's important for me to say that I think I certainly support. I hope committee supports that decision as well, because much as I've enjoyed taking my kids to the switch on in King Street, having that many people gathering in a bottleneck area in the run up to Christmas with COVID numbers would not be a good idea. So no, I'm certainly supportive of that responsible approach you've taken. But I also note that the Business Improvement District have lots of creative ideas themselves. So I don't think this will go unmarked. I think it will just be marked in a different way, which is, I suppose, similar to Hogmanay. I note there isn't an Esplanade party as such this year. Again, is that COVID related?
Again, that was an early decision that we took, but we will have, there will be a live music performance in the toll booth, not in the toll booth in Albert Halls, between Christmas and New Year, and then we're going to have Kayleys in the toll booth actually at Hogmanay, and we're going to have a family day in the Albert Halls, which will be launched, I think it'll be early next week, around a family day that will be from 10 to 3 for families to come along and take part in activities during the day, which we think is a nice, appropriate thing to do, because we've always had a family element to our Hogmanay celebrations.
So again, just for clarity in my own head, the decision to not have an Esplanade event was really because we would have had to have been planning that 3 or 4 months ago, when we wouldn't have known what the situation was like at Christmas. But now that we do know it's a little bit more open, we are planning some in-person events as well. So it's a timing thing.
Yes. Yeah, okay. We would need to have started planning it. We more or less, as soon as one's finished, we more or less start planning the next one.
Okay, and fireworks again. Fireworks at the National Wallace Monument last year were fantastic, so I'm delighted to see that approach. I think one of the things about the fireworks at the Wallace Monument was more people could see them from the comfort of their own gardens. Councillor McPherson.
Just very briefly, Chair, I've got to express my disappointment in the lights thing, because I, like yourself, taking my kids and grandkids along and stuff like that in the past year, and it seems, yeah, I know I had to make an early judgment. At the end of the day, you've got 50,000 at Ibrox, 60,000 at Celtic Park, but you can't have a few hundred in King Street, an open air event. And they had the fireworks in Bridge of Allen last week, which went really well, and they were doing checks and that. So it's really disappointing, to be completely honest with you. But I understand the reasons for it. I had to make an early call, but I don't say we couldn't make a late call on something as straightforward as switching on a Christmas lights. I've got to express my disappointment on behalf of the local residents. Yeah,
Councillor McPherson, I'll join you in expressing my disappointment on behalf of my family and others as well. But I think this is a judgment call that has to be made, and your position is valid, and I can't argue with it. But I think at some point we've got to look at these numbers for COVID and take a decision. I recognise it's not going to please everybody, but certainly I'm supportive of where the officers are with this one. But I recognise your position is both reasonable and valid as well. Councillor Roxburgh.
Thanks, Chair. I'm in wholehearted agreement with Councillor McPherson in this. I think, I understand a decision has been made, a line has been drawn somewhere, but, people, particularly kids, missed out on so much over the last 20 months, and Christmas just wasn't Christmas last year. And I think it's very hard to justify not having an open air event when, as he says, there's such large crowds at sporting events going on. So it was just to gently ask the question, is there any possibility that decision can be reconsidered or at least looked at again?
I think you're asked. Well, see before you do that.
Sorry.
Of course you can't, but just sit and say that the Christmas light switch on's in 10 days' time. This isn't a challenge Annika approach to cultural planning. The disappointment, the disappointment I share, Councillor Roxburgh, but I think the reasoning of saying that the planning had to take place 3 or 4 months ago is great. Celtic Park or Ibrox, they have stadiums, they have the infrastructure already in place that was mothballed and able to come back. I think asking the team to do a huge event with logistics to go for that in 10 days is quite unfair, if you don't mind me saying, because it is sort of suggesting to the public that we are taking an approach which is contrary to what they want. So I respect what you're trying to do, but I would just like to soften the implication that the officers are stealing an element of Christmas from our children, because they're working really hard and they've had to make some tough calls. And I think we really need to support them. And had we wished to make these points, rather than making them in public at the committee 10 days before the Christmas light switch on, we could have made it to the team 2 months ago, 3 months ago, when they were starting to make the decision itself. So, respect for the Councillor Roxburgh, your point is well made, but I just wish to offer that counterpoint to it to balance it a little bit. Stuart Oliver, do you wish to come in? Actually, no, Stuart, I'm going to stop you right there. We'll pick up in this in a couple of minutes. It's 2 minutes to 11 o'clock. Apologies, we got a little bit heated and missed the time. I'm calling a recess right now. We'll return in 10 minutes to allow you to go off Mark Armistice Day as you see fit. So we'll return in 10 minutes' time. we'll do the roll call and we'll get started again. So if everybody's, well, that's 11 minutes since we called the recess. So if you want to start the recording and bring us back to live broadcast. Thank you all. Welcome back to Community Planning and Regeneration. My apologies for being quite so close to 11 o'clock before calling the recess to the last meeting, but I thought it was important that we'll take a few moments to mark Armistice Day as we each wished to do so. Now that we're back, can I ask the clerk to take a roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Chris Kane.
Present.
Councillor Scott Farmer.
Present.
Councillor Douglas Dodds.
Present.
Councillor Alistair McPherson.
Here.
Councillor Susan McGill.
I'm here.
Councillor Ross Oxborough.
Present.
That's all members present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Right, I think we interrupted Stuart when he was coming back with a comment on whether it was possible to do something for Christmas lights switch on. Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Morning, members. Stuart Oliver here, Senior Manager for Economic Development and Communities. Yeah, so I understand the views and the disappointment, and officers are disappointed as well that we don't proceed with these things. But you know, these are difficult decisions that have to be taken early, because it does take several months to plan events safely and to coordinate them properly, and even longer these days with the additional public safety concerns that have to be factored in. But you weigh these things based on assessment of risk, and it's a difficult time in the Forth Valley as well. Yeah, I think it's the right decision at this stage. Predictions remain for a quite difficult winter with pressure on health services, and the council obviously don't want to do anything that might put additional pressure on that. What I will say is that still in 2022, a large part of our thinking, as that's emerged during 2021, was to make sure that these things do come back, and they come back with a bang. We know people have missed them. We know the local communities have missed events. We know businesses have missed them in terms of what they can bring. So certainly that's a large part of our thinking, that we'll do more in 2022. Hopefully when we're back in amongst more normal times in a safer environment. Hopefully that will be the case, and we're confident it will be so. But yeah, that's definitely factored in our thinking, that we do understand that people are disappointed about these things, and we'll have a good and a big year in that regard next year.
Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, again, Chair, I'll reiterate my disappointment here. You know, the Bridge of Allen round table had the fireworks display last week, which was massively attended, and you know, and they were looking for COVID passes and such like so, and I'm sure they put all the planning into that several weeks, if not months ago as well. So it just seems that the council lagging in this issue. So I understand where Stuart's coming from here, but I can't see. It'll be very interesting to see if there's any spike after the firework display. So I think, you know, you become so risk averse, you end up doing nothing, and it's really disappointing. And I know constituents have been in contact with me and expressed their disappointment, so really disappointing again. As Councillor Oxford said, kids missed it so much last year. So I think we've missed a trick, to be honest.
Again, you know, I'm more than happy with more than supportive of your comments and your viewpoint, but I'm going to ask Fiona to come back in. Fiona, what are we doing for kids in the run up to Christmas in terms of our other events programme? Because there's more to giving enjoyment to kids in the run up to Christmas than simply the Christmas light switch on. So what other family events are we planning that we are able to do?
In terms of the venues, you know, we will have our normal, we've got a whole selection of live performances, and we've got a family ceilidh. We'll have some Christmas films, and we've got our workshops and classes. We've not got anything you know, a big kind of Christmas event. There's Christmas markets in the Albert Halls. So yeah, there's an exciting programme around the Christmas time, but I suppose what I'm saying is there's not a specific Christmas. I would just say that specifically a Christmas programme.
But there are cultural activities.
Oh yeah. There's lots happening, and I'm happy to circulate the programme out to elected members.
I think that would be useful, actually. So Councillor McPherson's point about disappointment for the kids, it would be useful to see if we're not addressing this with the Christmas light switch on, and what other ways are we addressing it. Councillor Oxford, did you wish to come back? Your hand went up and then down again.
No, it's fine, Chair. Nothing to add. I mean, yes, disappointed, but I understand that that's the way it is, and I'm not going to be able to change that here and now. So yeah, nothing further to add. Yeah,
I do disagree, Councillor McPherson, when you're characterising officers as risk averse. I think they are risk aware, and I think the fact that we've got programmes, we did a science festival, shows that we are that we're, you know, not getting everything right, but we're doing well. So again, I'm not. I apologise, Councillor McPherson. I'm not trying to take away from your point. I'm simply trying to balance it a little bit with another view. But again, I'll let you have the last word of this.
Yeah, Chair. I think Fiona saying that, you know, and I understand why people are so, but yeah, if you've got inside events, you know, in Albert Hall where it's poor ventilation there, believe me, there'll be more risk associated with an indoor event than there would be with an outdoor event with COVID passes like they did have at the fireworks event. So I understand why officers, they don't want to end up being held responsible for any outbreak, but I think there'll be far more risks associated with an indoor event in Albert Hall than there would be with a switch on Christmas lights where I would have got King Street and socially distanced. I'm just so disappointed, but that's the way it is.
Okay, so are we happy enough now to move on to item 11? What we asked to, yeah, so we can move on to item 11. Sorry, Councillor McGill, apologies. On you
go. So I was just going to say, been listening to the debate, and I can agree a wee bit on both sides of this. However, we are where we are, and we're 10 days away, as you say, from the light switch on. So there's nothing really that can be done at the minute. And I dare say the officers made the decision because it would have presumably cost money to put the event on. And if they spent that money and then had to cancel it, they'd have been criticised for that. So they're kind of in between the devil and the deep blue sea in a way there. But the point I just wanted to make is Stirling Council is not the only organisation in Stirling. And I'm assuming that there's lots of other activities out there for children through the schools, through community councils. I've heard them putting events on for kids, and things like the Smith and the castle and, you know, the university. I don't know, there'll be other groups out there that are doing things as well. So I don't think the children will miss out terribly much this year again. Obviously, it's not going to be a normal Christmas as they see it, but it's a different Christmas, and I think families will need to adjust accordingly. Thanks.
I think that's a great point, Councillor McGill. I think the McRoberts got their panto back this year.
Oh no, they haven't.
Oh no, they haven't.
Oh no, they haven't.
I couldn't resist that. I'm sorry. Right, okay. And on that note, lighter note, let's just move on from item number 2. I should say they have got it, by the way. That was a terrible panel joke in case anyone thought different. Right, so that's item 10. Let's move on to item 11, which is the proposed diversity charter. I think this is Liz Fraser talking to this one.
Hello, sorry.
Hello.
I frequently have connection problems. What I would just like to say, sorry, Liz Fraser, Policy Officer Equalities. The report before yourselves is essentially a very brief report. It requests elected members' agreement to adoption of a diversity charter, which provides a single reference point reiterating the Council's values and principles, which we already work to and already underpin our commitment to pursuing equality for our citizens and our employees through the services that the Council delivers, obviously, and as an employer. It meets a commitment for a Council priority reference number B18, and also adds information on some of the guidance, some of the strategies, some of the approaches that we already adopt in terms of interacting with our service users in particular, and the relationships that we have with them. It essentially will remind us all of how we should be operating in respect of promoting equality for our citizens, communities, and obviously our employees.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to questions. None? Okay. In that case, we are asked to move to the recommendation. I would say it's a very good report, Liz. It's a very good charter. I think it will be useful to have it. I think it will. It's always useful to point to these things and articulate them. When we can articulate our values as well as live them, I think that helps others to see what sort of an organisation we are and aspire to be. So I welcome this. I welcome that it's written down, and I welcome that it's a document that we can use going forward. So thank you for your work in this, and thank you for the charter itself. So if we're asked to approve it, so we're okay with the recommendations actually. So approve the Stirling Diversity Charter. Yes. Okay.
Agreed.
Note number 2, number 3, and number 4. Yes. Good. Thank you very much. That was a quick report, Liz. Thank you very much. Right, on to item number 12, the re-establishment of area forums. I believe this is Crawford Bell speaking to this one. Crawford? Crawford, do you want to introduce that? There you go. Thank you.
Apologies, I was having an issue there with Teams. It seemed to be a delay on it, getting my mic and camera on. Apologies. Crawford Bell, Community Development Manager, Economic Regeneration and Communities. Yeah, the paper before you follows up previous papers that have come to committee regarding the reinstatement of area forums. The latest paper that you have before you follows on from previous committee where option 1 was presented in terms of a formation of a digital solution, primarily a digital solution to the reinstatement of area forums, building on the success we've had with the Engage platform and other forms of consultation and engagement. Coming back from previous committee, we've added an option 2 in terms of looking at how we can provide resource to the area forums, providing staff within the community development team that would build a capacity of communities, particularly through community councils and formed community groups, to create area forums where they would be serviced, managed by staff from the community development team. So the 2 options are there, and there's also the request that we go out to consultation on both those engagements to get a formal opinion from primarily community councils, but also other interested community groups. So the paper is there for consideration and comment, and any questions I'm happy to take.
Thank you, Crawford. I'll open up for questions. No, Crawford, I'd like us to go a little bit further than this. I think that certainly as a former community council chair, I found the Wallace Forum to be very useful and very valuable, because it took me out of my community council and put me in an environment where I was speaking to other community groups from other areas, not just within my own community. And I worry that with our community engagement strategy, I worry that by making it quite so digitally based as it is, that we are robbing our communities and our officers of the opportunity that comes from being able to look each other in the eye to discuss issues. I think that emails and communications are often nuanced in the written word, and I think an awful lot can get done when you meet around a table. I think we are all suffering a little bit, even when we're meeting digitally like this, that we recognise that some of the conversations and some of the relationships that we build up in person haven't happened over the last 2 years. So I think we do need something where we meet in person, and I don't think, going back to ask the communities at this stage exactly, which of these 2 options do you want? I think we should also be sitting saying, how do we create a forum which is a physical forum, not a virtual forum? So whilst I like the direction of travel, I wonder if we could perhaps add in that you work with convener, vice convener. I'm happy to include opposition spokesperson this as well, just to shape the consultation so that we are not simply asking the question, do you want A or B? We are selling the concept and selling the idea of the benefits of an in-person forum. So I think certainly, I think between us we could probably push that and come back with a positive thing. I'm not really worried as to whether it's an area forum that comes back as I remember it. It's simply that a forum, a physical forum where groups can get together, I think is incredibly valuable, and even more so after we've had nearly 2 years of meeting digitally. So could we perhaps, I suppose I'm just suggesting that we soften out number 2, agree that officers carry out a further community engagement exercise in consultation with convener, vice convener and opposition spokesperson to move this forward. Councillor Dodds, if you want to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I concur with your comments. I think that we need to get back into the forums and live meetings. I mean, I've attended no end of live meetings in the Allen Centre. I'm going to one this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Calendar Community Council have already started their own community forum with Balquhidder, Lochernhead, Strathara and Killin. So that's what they're doing already. So they're looking at it in a positive way. And I agree. I don't know why we can't do it in a positive way as well. Digital is no good for communities. It's no good for anybody. We're not going to achieve anything. It'll be something else. It'll be just sitting there on somebody's computer. Bearing in mind, Cornton Community Council haven't re-engaged yet, so they're not up and running. So they would be part of the Wallace Forum. Well, they're no longer there. So this is the problem, and Causeway Head are struggling as well for members. So, you know, it's a difficult thing, but unless we do something positive, we're just going to be going nowhere.
Yeah, and my community, Hill Park, doesn't have a community council, and perhaps one step to engaging people is to bring interested individuals or groups along to a forum rather than through the mechanism of a community council. Would it be possible to perhaps undertake a pilot, Crawford, to test the theory that this is useful, rather than simply ask it as a hypothetical to community council? I would also make the point that I was a little bit concerned when you said you were going to consult mainly with community councils, because I think one of the key benefits of area forums was that they expanded that participation beyond community councils and gave groups a chance to come together.
Yeah, just to go back to Councillor Dodds' point, I really like the model where these things are community-led. That's within the spirit of community development, what we do. So I certainly think in terms of your question about pilots, Councillor Kane, then we could certainly look at that pilot as perhaps an area of learning, and then share that out amongst other community councils and community groups as a way of doing it. I wouldn't be adverse to that at all. But certainly in terms of your points down about the consultation, then yeah, we could consult on the consultation of what that would look like. But no, absolutely would be inclusive of all community groups that would have an interest in this.
Yeah, I slightly disagree with your point about community-led. I think we're concluding two issues there. Community-led is always the correct idea. Community-run is often a difficult thing, because when we're asking people to give their time to better their community, more often than not, people want to do things to better the community. They do not want to administer a forum. So if we were creating and running, as it says in option 2, where we were providing the support, but allowing the communities to set the agenda, to chair the meetings, I think that is what I believe is a successful community-led forum. But if what we say is we want the communities to also organise it, I think that's a harder ask. And I think we do have a certain skill set, and we do have a certain resource that we can put in and support this without necessarily leading it. Isabel, do you want to come in?
Yes, Isabel McKnight, Chief Operating Officer, Communities and Partnerships. Yeah, I think it's probably something that we can build into our ambition for recovery and renewal in terms of looking at community resilience. I think a pilot of some sort, which I think we all need to be collectively agreed on around how we communicate with our, as you say quite eloquently, Councillor Kane, all of our groups, not just community councils. And also that will be replicated across the public, but we want to do that on a phased basis and to make sure that we hear every Stirling voice. So I think it's something that we would welcome.
Okay, well, I think what I'm suggesting then is if we're agreeing in principle of a pilot, I don't necessarily want to put that into the recommendations. I think we've got a direction of travel and broad agreement that would be a good idea. I simply would want to change recommendation 2 to say agree that officers carry out a further community engagement exercise in consultation with chair, vice chair and opposition spokesperson. We can add that in. I think that allows us to take this offline and try and progress this to a positive outcome. Isabel, do you want to come back in? Nope.
Sorry, legacy hand.
Okay, is that agreeable to committee?
Agreed.
Sheila, are you okay, Sheila, with the changed words? You're fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, that's item 12. Item 13, the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership update. Is this Wendy that's talking to this? Hi,
it
Wendy.
is. Thank you, Councillor Kane.
I love the background, by the way. It's maybe a bit early
Thank
for snow,
you.
but it looks good.
It's Winter Wonderland.
I think we'll all have that shortly.
Absolutely. Wendy Forrest, and I'm the Head of Strategic Planning and Health Improvement for Clackmannanshire and Stirling Health and Social Care Partnership. Councillor McGill's put her hand up. Oh, no, she hasn't. That's fine. Just to note from an earlier item, Councillor Kane, you'll be pleased to know that NHS Forth Valley and ourselves are working to plant apple trees across the site of Stirling Health and Care Village.
Excellent. That is good to hear.
So to go on to the Alcohol and Drug Partnership, this is just an update paper for members to note the content and the progress of work against the delivery plan, as well as some of the key areas of work which I think members will be pleased to see in terms of progressing services to work with our colleagues within housing and homelessness, as well as working more robustly, I think, with our third sector partners across a range of Change, Grow, Live, and also seeking to work with CAB around the continuation of the support that we have for those with seeking income maximisation. And also with the appointment of our new ADP lead, he has been out to meet the Salvation Army in Raploch, as well as meeting all of our local partnerships and partners locally. And we're looking to develop and grow the role of the Alcohol and Drug Partnership and build on the work of colleagues previously in that post. So it's really an update report. Colleagues and members will be aware that the delegation of the ADP went to the Health and Social Care Partnerships Integration Joint Board at the end of last year. And so we are taking a report to the IJB in November, just with the action plan and the update of the annual report that was submitted this year. Thank you, Councillor Kane.
Okay, thank you. I think it's important to say for this that as Wendy said, the operation of the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership, the ADP, has moved across to the Health and Social Care Partnership with the IJB, the Integrated Joint Board. I'm conscious there's an awful lot of acronyms here. The operation of the ADP now falls out with this committee's remit, but the impact of the work of the ADP very much falls within the remit of this committee. So whilst I think we all recognise from a governance point of view it's a little bit untidy, I think it's incredibly important that this committee continues to keep a watching eye on what is happening within this area of work. So that's why we're here to look at the outputs and the community partnership part of it, rather than the governance around the ADP. Councillor Oxford, in fact, no, it was Councillor McPherson first.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's important that this committee does have oversight on the Alcohol and Drug Partnership here. I've got a few quick questions, Chair, and I think my first question to be Wendy would be, I had a meeting during the summer and at the Belfield Centre with Marie Valente. I can't remember the else was given, it's an age thing, right? And I was told then in August that these services, the CGL and CADS, weren't all back 100% back face to face. So can you give us an update on are we back to 100% face to face meetings with service people, with addictions? My first question, Linda.
Yep, thank you, Councillor McPherson. No, they're not. Although we are in a programme of recovery, the NHS still continues to be in an emergency response, which means that I think up until April 2022, there continues to be an emergency response in terms of the NHS, and you'll be aware that CADs are part of NHS Forth Valley, and that's the delivery model locally. Change, Grow, Live are continuing to do a hybrid model, seeing those most vulnerable face-to-face, and our recovery community are up and running on a face-to-face basis with the recovery cafes across Clackmannanshire and Stirling. So it is a varied picture based on the different ways and the way that services are organised across our communities.
Chair, I need to come back on that, because that concerns me, and I'll tell you why, and I'm glad you mentioned the Salvation Army in your presentation. I've attended 2 or 3 addictions clinics on a Thursday afternoon down at the Salvation Army, and you speak to people down there with addictions and they introduce yourself and tell you their story, and you hear from them that that's what they're lacking, is the lack of face-to-face. A lot of them don't have devices, a lot of them don't have plans with their phones that they can connect. They don't have a Teams app, or they don't have Zoom and such. So that is what, to me, is sadly lacking. And I can't emphasise that strongly enough, Chair. The people with addictions do not want a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting. They want to meet people, and that's the significant challenge we've got. So, and you know, if you want to hear it, go down to the Salvation Army or speak to anybody who's going down there. They'll tell you themselves down there. So I think it's important there, but there is some good stuff in this paper. I totally agree with that. I think the key thing I would want to discuss with Wendy here is in page 138 about stigma and prejudice. And somebody who's spent a lot of time with homeless people over the last year or year and a half, because that's rife, absolutely rife. I've seen them being verbally abused and physically abused because, and how we go about doing that. And I look at page 139, the 11-year CADs, I saw that. You know, the way that people with addictions are treated in the community is absolutely terrible. You know, and these are people who are ill, not a choice they've got, they're ill, and the sooner people in the community get a better understanding of that, the better. I'm really concerned with that, but I'm glad it's highlighted in the report. And I think, Chair, I think that the last thing I want to say in page 159 is to do with families looking for support. Again, that comes through very, very strongly. You know, the people I'm supporting here, the families, and I know myself in the past, I've supported not a close family member with addictions, and I know the impact it had on me and other family members. That's a horrific feeling. You're helpless. And, you know, I know families do need support. And again, I've got the directory, and I've forwarded that on to people and signposted them to people. And again, I'm hearing here that support is not there face to face. So, Chair, and I think the last thing I'd like to say, and I realise that as a great thank you to Isabel McKnight here, because in relation to the work happened down at Springcare's house, highlighted in page 123, especially at Springcare's house, I really welcome that. This is about bringing extra support down there at Springcare's house. We've got harm reduction there with CGL, but to bring a recovery worker in there, and there's also a mental health worker going in there over and above that doesn't pick this up in this report. That's great credit to Isabel and Stephen Clark. I've been moaning about that for several months now, and there's some good things going to happen down at Springcare's house, and the more that we value people with addictions, you may see things change. So well done, Isabel and Stephen Clark, for doing that.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Before I come to Councillor Oxford, can I just echo your comments, Councillor McPherson, around stigma and prejudice? I think this is the only paper that ever comes anywhere in council where we look at this through the lens of people who have a difficult relationship with drugs, or indeed their families. When we have other papers, and I'm conscious it's maybe a controversial thing, where we had the motion at council that was looking at housing and housing allocation through that lens. This is the only time where we have a space where we're looking at the lens of people interacting with drugs, and I think that this is the space for us as elected members to perhaps throw out to the wider council, to other elected members, to others in society, that the language that we use is key. And, you know, we do tend to use language that is prejudicial and stigmatizes people, and we shouldn't. You know, no one chooses to have a lifestyle, you know, of misuse or inappropriate use of drugs. No one chooses that, and you know, there, but for the grace of God go I. When it comes to our lifestyle choices, so I'm trying to pick my words carefully because I'm not trying to say this in a controversial way. But I'm just trying to make the point that language around this issue is hugely important, and more often than not, we get it wrong. And I think that we all need to really take a look at how we are approaching this. I certainly know, and as other elected members will know, when you have neighbours of those living next to those with an addiction that come to your surgery, the difficult thing that we have to say to people who have got issues, have got problems, or seeing issues within the community is both the neighbour and the person that they're coming to complain about are our constituents. We have a responsibility to everyone in Stirling, and one of the ways we could perhaps make this an easier journey for everybody is to be mindful of the language that we use. So I'll maybe leave it at that, because I'm conscious this is a particularly difficult tightrope to walk. Councillor, sorry, Wendy, do you want to come back on that before I go to Councillor Roxburgh?
If that's okay, Councillor Kane, and just to welcome Councillor McPherson's comments around some of the work that's happening, and to offer some reassurance. The meeting with the Salvation Army went exceptionally well, and with Simon as the new ADP lead, and Simon is really keen to be working with the Salvation Army, and exactly as you describe, in that face-to-face way. And actually the work that we've been doing with Isabel and Stephen around homelessness and housing has been really successful, and we're also hoping to build that team to much more of an emergency response team, as you describe. So I would hope, as you go forward, and we continue to bring these reports here for discussion and debate, that you will see the impact that we are making. But just to underline the point, we are still in an emergency response in terms of the NHS, which makes the delivery of CADs in a different bit of the world almost from those community responses. But we are working hard to have a matrix of care and support available to people wherever they are across our communities. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Roxburgh. Councillor McPherson, I'll bring you in a little while if that's okay. Councillor Roxburgh.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to say, if Councillor McPherson wants to respond directly to anything Wendy's just said, I'm happy for him to go ahead to keep all that together, if that's easier.
Okay, Councillor McPherson, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks for that, Ross. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that Wendy always want to say there in relation to the stuff at Springcare's house and Salvation Army do fantastic work with the addictions community, and what they're looking they're looking to get more involved in at Springcare's house. I know their service level agreements, so they need to deal with that themselves. But I think that we are lacking down there, and yes, I welcome the mental health support and recovery support there, but it's somebody out of our stuff we need with somebody that's trained. It's not a security guard like we've got just now who's trained to actually see if somebody's addicted. That's still a gap in the service down there, and what we're doing there still won't cover that. So I think if we could look at getting something out of hours at weekends and evenings where people come in and they can identify somebody who's actually had an overdose, that's really quite important. That was laid on strongly by the Salvation Army. No, I see Stephen Clark got his hand up.
Stephen, do you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Stephen Clark, Chief Housing Officer here. Yeah, I acknowledge your comments there, Councillor McPherson. It's something that we're looking at. We know we need to increase our proportion of supported accommodation in general, beyond Springcare's house as well. And at the same time, we need to consider whether we amend the model of staffing there to have more on-site support staff out with working hours, although we'll do visits without the security staff out with the office hours. It's not consistent, it's not all the time, so it's something that we are looking at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Roxburgh.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions, Wendy. If the Alcohol and Drug Partnership aren't the right body to address these questions to, then let me know. First thing I wanted to ask about though is etizolam. So I've heard from other sources this week that in terms of the drugs that people are using in Scotland, there's a rising prevalence of etizolam and it's causing more problems in our community. Are you able to talk to us at all about the what's happening with etizolam in Stirling? You know, how much of it is there and what sort of problems it's causing?
I would need to go and seek additional advice from my clinical colleagues, but I can certainly provide that for you, Councillor Oxborough, if you're interested.
Oh, yes, I would be. That would be grand. Thank you.
Okay.
And second question, again, if you're not the right body, then let me know. But are you able to tell us what the waiting times are in this area for people looking for residential addiction treatments?
Not off the top of my head. Again, I would have to go back to my operational and clinical colleagues to get that information, but I can get that for you.
Okay, grand. Thank you. That'd be great in both cases.
No problem.
Okay, on sort of specific questions like that, Ross, I think we're all happy to take them in advance of the meeting if it's for information that's not there. Councillor McGill. Oh, sorry, Ross. No,
I was just going to say, I knew those questions were a bit of a risk. I didn't know if they would be right, but it is my first time at this committee, so I thought I would take the risk all the same. But in future, I'll submit them in advance.
No, you don't. You never have to submit them in advance. That's not what I mean. I just mean sometimes if you want to get the answer at the committee for something that's quite a specialised piece of knowledge, it can just give Wendy a little bit of additional time. Nothing at all wrong with your questions. More just to be helpful. Councillor McGill.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, excuse me. I just wondered if you had any information, because when you brought in the naloxone project, I thought that was really, a really good strategy, and I just wondered, has that been used? Has it been needed? And if so, how has it been effective? Have the workers found that of benefit to them?
Is that in relation to housing services, Councillor McGill?
Well, it was the strategy of training staff, frontline staff, to use naloxone if they came across somebody who was an overdose, or they thought was an overdose, that they could administer that right away. So we passed that, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago. I can't quite remember. So I just wondered how effective it had been, if it had been used, if it had been needed.
I'm going to defer to Stephen Clark. Stephen's put his hand up.
Stephen Clark again, Chief Officer for Housing. Just to confirm that I'm aware that naloxone has been used within the homeless setting and it has contributed to saving lives. I don't have specific statistics on that, but I can provide those after this meeting. But I'm aware it has been used, yes.
I think we had a report, I don't know if I'm stealing Councillor Farmer's thunder, but we had a report of a use of it at public safety. Councillor Farmer, do you want to
just to say, Chair, that the Public Safety Committee under the Police Scotland report, there are officers that are trained in the use of naloxone, and there have been 3 interventions in which Police Scotland have used naloxone, and it's contributed to saving those lives with overdose. So that's a positive news story that the use of it across our partnership is actually saving lives.
That's good to hear. My next question is, I suppose, in agreement with Councillor McPherson, that the pandemic has affected the vulnerable in society far more disproportionately than the more resilient people. And it would be good to know if, I know the NHS is an emergency footing, and I know the reasons why, and but we're now, I don't know, coming up 2 years of the pandemic, and the stress that's put on the vulnerable people. and people who've maybe been doing quite well, but the added stress of all this financial stress and one thing and another, I'm just wondering, you know, what's the kind of time scale for CADS in particular and the associated services to step up the face-to-face, because as Councillor McPherson says, you know, these people often don't have facilities, they don't have devices, access to the internet, don't value online contact. So just wondering, you know, is there any steps afoot to increase the face-to-face contact for people, and not just the people who are in crisis, but the people who are heading towards crisis again? Thanks.
Wendy?
Councillor Kane, I'm content to answer that if it'd be helpful.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So the formal process of the NHS being an emergency footing is up until April 2022. So they will continue in that emergency response until that date. In terms of more broadly, CADS are keeping in touch with people by however means it is helpful and suitable for them. So they are using phone, they are using online, and they are also seeing people face-to-face within acute and secondary, as well as primary care settings, to ensure that people are still able to access care and support when they need it. Our third sector colleagues, our commissioned services, have stepped up the face-to-face, whether that be the Salvation Army, Change Grow Lives, the recovery cafes and others. They are seeing people face-to-face. So although there continues to be that emergency footing within CADS, within the NHS, they are continuing to provide care and support. It just looks slightly different. And if people are really in need of that face-to-face support, then it will be provided to them, obviously using all of the safety measures and guidance that we have to hand. Thank you.
Wendy, my instinct is listening to Councillor McGill and Councillor McPherson. I 99.9% agree that all of this should be done in the face, and it's poor that it's being done remotely. But I'm sort of conscious that it's very anecdotal. That I'm wondering if the ADP or indeed anybody is kind of quantifying this a little bit. You know, what has been the impact of removing face-to-face services, and does the hybrid model actually offer any advantages, or is it simply as we suspect that this is one area of operation where hybrid or digital is just no match at all for what can be done in person?
I think it's quite a subjective position that we are in, and it's very dependent on the individuals that we are working with. Some people are actually embracing this kind of online culture and behaviour, and actually find it, because of the stigma attached to their condition, then actually it's easier to be online, it's easier to have those conversations, not within a clinical setting, not within a community setting. So in terms of quantifying it, I can certainly look at the numbers of people going through services. You'll see in the report that Change Grow Live are seeing a significantly increased number of people coming through their service, and as we have all said, we're not out of the pandemic, so there are still people sitting at home that have not come forward, that we have not seen, and will only be seen when we return to a more normalised way of living.
But I suppose, you know, we are there to advocate as elected members for those who are struggling to advocate for themselves, but there will be a fair number of your service users who are able to advocate for themselves. Are we actually asking them? Are we, you know, are we doing, you know, consultations just to sit and say, look, you've got an option now. We can of course get you back as soon as we can, but what have you like to this? Because I suppose where I'm inquiring is, I'm very much in Councillor McPherson's camp with this one, that we need to get back to in-person as soon as possible. But like every other area of operation, there will be benefits and opportunities of digital and hybrid that it's important that we don't lose. So that's a question of quantifying. Councillor McPherson, do you want to come back? Oh, sorry,
Thanks,
Wendy.
Chair, and thanks for indulgence for letting me speak so much, but I'm really quite passionate about this, and I think that to answer Councillor McGill's question in relation, the removal of face-to-face has resulted in suffering, and I hate to say it, but deaths. I know of 2 people who are getting support, and then the face-to-face went, they missed appointments and weren't chased up and ended up dying. So that's the unintended consequences and indirect deaths associated with COVID. You know, and that'll open it in the wash in the future. Chair, so that's the facts of the matter. Speak of the Salvation Army, you go down there, they used to feed 15 and 20 people a day down there. It's people have died. You know, that's why they're feeding far less than they're doing now during the daytime. And it's really, I strongly encourage, you know, elected members to go down to the Salvation Army, see the work they're doing, because they've continued it. They've continued the majority through the lockdown period. But also, I would encourage elected members, you know, and I know Springcare's House has a stigma in the eyes of a lot of elected members as well, but go down to Springcare's House, see what our staff are dealing with down there, see the conditions people are living in down there, and you'll see the fantastic work that is going on down there with Corin McNeil, Isabel McKnight and Stephen Clark. It's brilliant. It's actually really quite inspiring when you go down there. Very challenging circumstances, yes, very challenging people, but they're fellow human beings, and we need to care more for them. And I think the changes that's highlighted in this paper that's happening in the homeless buildings and the homeless settings is really, really good. And I can't emphasise enough how chuffed I am to see it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, that seems like a good place to leave it. Thank you for these comments, Councillor McPherson.
Councillor Kane, can I just come back? You asked a question around consultation, and you'll see in the report that we have spoken to Scottish families. They have facilitated a consultation on our behalf, and as Councillor McPherson rightly says, it was a hard read, and that's one of the key areas that Simon's working on. And also Simon is visiting all of our recovery communities to get that feedback face to face from individuals who are using our services and using the services of our providers. So I can certainly ask for that to be more prescriptive in the next report, if that would be helpful, just that kind of engagement and consultation.
I always happy to let you write the report as you see fit. When I think I've got the consideration I was looking for, that it is being asked. So thank you for that. Okay, are we comfortable enough to move on to item 14? So I should say, Wendy, thank you very much for attending committee to talk to that. Gender-based violence partnership update is item number 14. Leslie, are you speaking to this one?
I am. Thank you, convener. This report introduces the annual quality standards and performance framework return compiled by the Gender-based Violence Partnership for return to the improvement service. The return information indicates that Stirling's partnership remains in a good position. Whilst there are areas for improvement, the partnership does have a solid foundation of cross-sector membership, a shared strategic vision and priorities within its strategy, and an evidence-based action plan to implement, monitor and review activity. The partnership has developed an improvement plan based on the return's findings, with 17 individual actions for implementation and review, and these are aligned to the improvement areas noted at item 2.6 in the report. Progress on this plan will be reported and monitored by the partnership within the wider community planning and performance context. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Leslie, and welcome to Courtney Riley, who's the Community Planning Officer for Gender-based violence. I don't think Courtney's been at I don't know if she's here, or she is actually, I don't know if she's been at a committee before, but Courtney's in post for this particular area. Okay, any questions? Any comments? No? Okay, well, in that case, Leslie, can I start with that sort of general question that I've been asking all along, which is, where are we as we're emerging from the pandemic? Where are we with this entire area of operation? Are we recovering well? Are we coming out of it? Are we getting back to a sense of where we need to be as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I mean, again, a complex and difficult one, convener. I think probably similar issues as committee has been discussing this morning about particularly victims, survivors and victims that we don't know about in terms of domestic violence and gender-based violence. The operational services, I think Lisa from Stirling District Women's Aid is here today as well, report an increase. And as we're not out of the pandemic yet, probably more people who we don't know about. Services continue to operate though within a hybrid model and moving back to face-to-face, but I think there is, in terms of the discussions we've had at the partnership, what should we say? People out there who we know about who are being supported, still some capacity issues in terms of the operational services because of the numbers of people who are there, and people who we may not know about yet, but evidence and anecdotal evidence at a national and local level would tell us that these people, particularly women and girls, are there and will be coming for support.
Thanks, Leslie. I do know that Lisa McLaren from Stirling Women's Aid is here to talk to the next item, but Lisa, you're more than welcome if you've got any comments on this particular paper to talk with us. So just hello and welcome to committee, first of all. And as I say, just stick your hand up if you want to say anything or as we're going through this paper. I think I'll go to, unless you want to say something now.
Not really got anything to say just now. I'm happy to go through the paper. But just as Leslie was saying, our service actually went back face-to-face in May, and that was to reach out to the most vulnerable and families with many different complexities. So we are actually hoping that we've managed to achieve that now. And just like what everybody else has been saying, it's been difficult times and we've had to change the way that we've been working and supporting families, but that seems to be still going well.
Okay, I'm so conscious. I'm conscious not trying to ask you questions that will probably cover the next one, the next area. But so we may just complete the two reports a little bit. Leslie, resources generally at the moment. Obviously, we've been worried about a lot of issues that are going to be heightened, or things are going to be more resource intensive as we emerge from the pandemic. Again, it's a coping question. Are we coping? And I know that's a subjective question, but I'm just double checking that you feel we're okay at this point.
Internally, in terms of the role of the council and the council teams around about it, I think yes, we're delighted that we've managed to fill the post that Courtney now occupies. That's been, we know there was a bit of a gap there, so that's really important. In terms of the operational services, the national funding has now been released in terms of Equally Safe. Some were successful, some weren't. We monitor that through the partnership as well, so that where perhaps organisations may not have been as successful, there are opportunities for organisations to work together to make sure that needs and services continue. There wasn't any major issues raised at the last partnership meeting, which was just a couple of weeks ago. But however, you will note in Lisa's report that she does mention that she has a particular issue around a capacity within her children and family service. So what we do encourage is for all of the partners, particularly those who are delivering at the operational level, to report in to the partnership, to engage with Courtney so that we've got early awareness where there may be capacity issue. And I think that's particularly important as we move back, as Lisa says, to face-to-face, and there will be issues that will emerge. We need to keep a very close eye on capacity, and we'll do that through the partnership. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McGill.
Yep, thanks, Chair. It always surprises me that Section 4 doesn't come higher up in place, men desist from all forms of violence, because if that was absolute, we wouldn't need all this. However, I just wondered on that, it says about the court mandated programmes, there's none up and running. Obviously that's out with your control, but I just wondered what are the plans in place for that in the future. So that's item number 4 on that. And then number 5, it says partially met, some non-court mandated programmes are in place. I just wondered if you could maybe explain a wee bit about that, please. Thanks.
Leslie?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McGill. I'll come in and I'll maybe ask Courtney to come in with some details. Well, certainly you're right on the court mandated provision. That's not within our control. However, it is in our improvement action to discuss with our partners and just a little bit of research and evidence to find out why that is the case and what we might be able to do. We did report on the Caledonian programme. I think we included that. It was on the action log, so see the number of referrals we have to that. In general terms, in terms of the role of men and the role of men in terms of perpetrators and preventing violence against women, that was a very specific area of concern and discussion at the last partnership, particularly in relation to 16 days of activism coming up, and a real importance in not blaming the victim, but focusing absolutely on the perpetrators and early intervention, if at all possible, in terms of awareness raising, education, the role of men in terms of challenging other men. So that's a very significant area of concern for the partnership, and one that in terms of our priorities, Councillor McGill, is very much up there amongst the highest. I don't know if Courtney, if you have any more information on the non-court mandated programmes. Thank you.
Hi there, this is Courtney Riley. Yep. So thank you very much for that, Leslie. In terms of the non-court mandated programmes, we first of all, like the improvement service actually conducted a kind of questionnaire that was put round all partners, and everyone could vote on whether they believed that the partnership were partly meeting or not meeting each of the quality standards. And so the review or the returns were fully based on the responses by partners within the partnership. And we intend on having a workshop session looking at the areas that we've said that we either partly meet or where we don't meet something. So this is something that we're going to be discussing really soon, and also incorporating this into our overall gender-based violence action plan review.
Thank you. Could you just introduce yourself and give your title, please, for the recording?
Sorry, thank you very much. It's Courtney Riley, and I'm the Gender-Based Violence Coordinator. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney. Can we talk about 16 days of action just for a second? I know I'm sort of broadening it out slightly beyond the report, but I know we've been talking about this. That's coming up later on this month. Leslie, it's one of the ones that we always mark. How are we getting on with our preparations to take an active part in the 16 days?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'll come in again, and Courtney can add the finer detail. As you know, we had a meeting just last week with yourself and colleagues in communication and the Chief Performance Officer to talk very much about the communications plan around 16 days. Now there is a national toolkit which is very comprehensive that actually gives us an opportunity to mark every day in the 16 days programme with a very specific message. We will look at using that programme nationally, but also very much focusing in to say where are the local issues that we would want to highlight, where's the local work that we want to demonstrate. So again, within the partnership, we've asked all partners to give us notification of their individual programme. So we will publicise that. We'll make sure that there are connections made across the programme. And Courtney is also working on activity that we can lead from a local authority, a community planning perspective, to make sure that the opportunity to raise awareness of all forms of violence against women and girls is maximised through the 16 days, and then that awareness raising leads to increased activity across 365 days of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Courtney, if you can come back and if you want to add anything to it, I think one of the things I took from our communications meeting that has been helpful, going back to that point that Councillor McGill was making, is I think what we said is that in our comms, women have to feel supported, men have to feel uncomfortable with the messaging. I think it's often the case that the "Don't Be That Guy" video that's going out at the moment does do that job of making men feel uncomfortable, and I think sometimes that's missed in the messaging. I think sometimes we forget to use the word men when we're talking about gender-based violence, and that's something we need to move away from. We are moving away from it. So I hope that our 16 days of action does make women feel supported and men feel uncomfortable with some of the messaging that's there. Courtney, I don't know if you want to add anything else at this point.
Thank you very much, convener. So yeah, it's Courtney Riley again, the Gender-Based Violence Coordinator, and we are actually drafting a programme of events that are taking place in the local area. So we're firming all of them up at the moment, and it's full of lots of different activity from lots of the different partners within the partnership, and also just more widely as well in terms of the local area, so local businesses looking to get involved. I know that the toll booth as well is looking to get involved, the castle as well is looking to get involved, so lots of things that are still being firmed up right now, but I'm hoping that we'll get a really comprehensive programme of events put together and shared out to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no more questions or comments on this paper, I think we can move on. Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay, on to item 15. So I don't know if I've given this explanation to committee before, but I'll quickly do it. In an effort to sort of streamline some of the papers that's coming, all of the sort of 6-month update reports, we sort of agreed to put them into one paper if at all possible. And then if something of seriousness needs to come out, we'll expand it into a further paper. And then when we did that, we realised that Councillor McGill has a conflict in some of them, so we've split them into 2 lots. And the reason they're in the order they are is item 15 are the ones that Councillor McGill doesn't have a conflict on, whereas item 16 are the ones that she does. So that's just an explanation. I had to ask that myself last week to remind myself why we've done it that way.
Considerate. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Very considerate. Thank you.
It means you get to leave us after we've considered this one. We've got Stirling and District Women's Aid in this report. I think this is the first time we've had Stirling District Women's Aid in this, and I'm sure Leslie will talk to why that's now featuring in the report. We've heard from Lisa, but Lisa McGloin is here. Is it McGloin or McGlone, Lisa? McGloin, okay. Lisa's here to tell us a little bit more about what Stirling Women's Aid have been doing and answer any questions specifically related that you may have. But I think I'm assuming it's Leslie that's going to talk to the overall paper.
It is. Thank you, convener. Firstly, on this report, can I just ask committee to note a correction, an updated correction to the report, and it is in connection with Stirling District Women's Aid. It's item 1.3. At the time of writing, we did anticipate that the contract would be concluded. However, this is not quite the case. The procurement route has been approved, and we are continuing to work together with Lisa, the supplier, to finalise the proposed contract. And we do expect this process to be concluded within a matter of weeks. So hopefully committee can accept that updated report, convener. In terms of the overall report, all of the organisations covered continue to deliver services within the ongoing restrictions of COVID-19. The templates attached to the report provide organisations with the opportunity to report their activity against the standard questions that we've agreed for this format. And this format has been used throughout the pandemic reporting period, so that will enable us to track the trends as organisations build towards recovery. For committee's reassurance, there are no significant financial performance or compliance issues reported with any of their organisations covered in this report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, I wonder if you want to just tell us a little bit about Stirling District Women's Aid. That could have got awkward actually now your contract's not been concluded, so we'll gloss over that slightly. I wonder if you want to just tell us a little bit about where you are as an organisation. If you want, there's nothing official, just a couple of minutes of your time.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Lisa McGloin and I'm the manager at Stirling and District Women's Aid, and we provide support for women and children who have experienced domestic abuse. We have various different services. We have our IDA for high risk victims of domestic abuse. We have our drop-in service, a family outreach service who visits women and children in the rural areas, our children's service where our children's workers go into the schools and the nurseries to offer support. We also have a prevention and communication worker who raises awareness to Stirling Council, the community and the schools. We have, obviously, as I said, we've had lots of difficulties, the same as everybody else throughout the pandemic. We have been working from home. The service continued to offer support over the phone, some guardian support, some urgent face-to-face support, but we wanted to get back as soon as possible because we realised that the most vulnerable and the women that are hardest to reach weren't actually getting the support because they didn't have online facilities or phones. So we went back to the office following the government restrictions in May and have continued to remain in the office since then.
Lisa, when we knew that when lockdown happened and people retreated into their homes, that was going to be problematic. I wonder, as we're coming out of lockdown, the reasons for leaving the house are less than they were 2 years ago. How difficult is it for women to seek out the support even when it is offered in person? You know, just trying to gently get out the door without raising a suspicion. How is that working okay as we come out of the pandemic to get people back in to get that in-person support?
Yeah, so what we did during the pandemic was we had to look at a whole new way of supporting women and children, and obviously that was, you know, using Teams and on the phone. But for those where it was really difficult to actually be able to leave the house to get that support, we worked very well with social media, and we actually went on Central FM, our local radio, just to give families a safety plan on how to do that. And that was some things like if you can go for a walk and be able to use the phone then, or get to the supermarket, if you could have sort of passwords with family members, if there's safe neighbours that you could get to very quickly that could just contact the police. There was also other supports available, such as going to the chemist. Boots the Chemist has people available for women with a password that they could then alert the police. So it was just about looking at the different ways and then getting that information out to everybody. And that did seem to work well. There were some families that didn't work for, and that's, again, why it was important for us to be able to open the doors for women to get access to the service as quick as possible.
Thank you. And can you talk about, I note on page 195, 2.2.14, it talks about 98% refuge occupancy. Now, I suspect with a refuge, it's as much about keeping keeping them working to as near capacity as possible, so you're not paying for additional capacity that's not needed. But I just want to double check that is intentional, that it's so close to capacity, or is there something going on there?
So it's really important to us to have that turnaround very quickly, and again, that was different guidelines. The way it works with a refuge, to be honest, is we've got people in and we usually have a waiting list, and so that just constantly goes round and it's full most of the time, or there's either families waiting to get into refuge. So that's why we're able to keep it. The small gap is really just about the turnover and getting that refuge ready for somebody else to move into.
But what's the occupancy versus the demand? You know, what sort of, you know, is the demand 120% of availability, or what's, and you know, if you can give us an idea of that rather than a specific term, how big is the waiting list, and how does that fit in with that statistic?
So the demand is, I would say, about 100%. There's always somebody looking for refuge accommodation. We've had recent meetings with Stephen Clark, who's head of housing, who's been extremely helpful and has actually offered us more refuge places because of that demand, which is going to be really useful in the future. But the waiting list did get bigger throughout the pandemic, but that's just because everything did slow down, and we're managing to get through that now, but the demand is still extremely high for refuge.
And before I open it to questions, 2.216, unprecedented increase in staff caseload numbers, and it's anticipated to continue in 2022 and beyond. You know, unprecedented increase. What's you know, what are we talking about here? What's a standard number of cases? What's the baseline, and you know, how unprecedented is it? Are you coping?
Well, are we coping? The main part of that is our children's service, and that was because our children's workers go into the schools but because the schools were closed, they actually weren't able to get into the schools. So our waiting list for the children's service has got bigger and bigger and bigger. We did receive some funding from the Scottish Government, some COVID funding, and we have been able to employ an extra children's worker for 1 year to get through that waiting list. The waiting list at the moment is still huge. There's about a 6 to 9 month wait for children that have been added to that list. Just now, we hopefully will see a difference because we've got someone in post, but they are only in post for a year. So I guess that's what then lies ahead in the future, is we still don't know where that waiting list will go and what it will look like this time next year.
I think it's the problem of funding for all organisations. It'd be wonderful if we could get the funding for 20 years. Councillor McPherson, you wish to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's in relation to the Stirling District Women's Aid report and questions for Lisa here. Lisa, I've been a stout supporter of Women's Aid and I've attended white ribbon marches over the years. I've been a stout supporter and great admiration for the work you do. And the numbers I see at 2.214, 402 individual women, that's frightening statistic. But I do know that the initial lockdown and the stay-at-home message really exacerbated things. You know, women just couldn't get out of the house and were terrified to get out of the house. And I know that exacerbated, but can you ever understand in Milton Bray, how many units do you have in Milton Bray? What's the capacity down there?
So in Milton Bray, we've got 7 units, self-contained units down there. In total, we've got 13 refuge places. We've accepted another 2 at the moment from Homeless and Housing, from Stephen Clark. And we are also proposing to get another 1 or 2 in the near future as well.
Okay, that's really good to know. That can I ask you, this is quite a thorny question, you probably won't like it here, but I know it's incumbent on me as a local member to ask for it. How many people do you evict every year? Because somebody contacted me, and I ain't mentioned names here, a woman with children who was in Women's Aid just recently received a 21-day eviction notice. So how many people do you evict every year?
Well, obviously we don't, that is not our aim to evict women. We do not want to do that. But when we do get referrals in, we do have certain rules that have to be followed. And that's just about keeping the individual family safe, but it's also about keeping all the families safe within the refuge accommodation. And I do actually know who you're talking about, and there was a lot of complications there. Before we evict anybody, we also go through different processes. It's not something that we do lightheartedly, and we only do it if we have to do it. And that would be because the other families weren't safe within refuge because of that individual. But how many families? Not that many, and it would only be if the rules had been broken quite seriously or had been broken a number of times.
Chair, just concerned me if somebody deemed appropriate to go into Women's Aid and then Women's Aid end up evicting them. I'd really like to know where they go to get refuge, to be honest with you. But this is, you know, and I knew you would be able to identify, given the small numbers. I ain't going to go further on that one, but it's just so committed, you know, that Women's Aid in certain circumstances do have to evict people, and that really worries me. So, but it's one for the future. But no, Lisa, keep up the good work, and I think that the numbers terrifying me when you say 402 rounds. That is frightening numbers for me. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Can I also just say as well that when we do evict women, part of our policy is that we support them to get other accommodation. It's not just that we evict them and that's it. We actually support them to move on somewhere safe in the future as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGill.
Yeah, thanks. I just wondered, when you're saying you're getting more accommodation from Stirling Council, which I think is great, I just wondered, other housing associations, are they part of this project as well to provide sort of scatter flats around about the area for you to use?
So At the moment, we do have other refuge. So part of that refuge also is we have refuge from Fourth Housing Association and Rural Stirling Association as well. They haven't offered us more refuge. It's only been Stirling Council that have offered that recently. But it is something that I would be happy to go back and speak to them about. We do work very closely with the other housing associations, but that's probably more about moving women on from refuge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just go back to Councillor McPherson's point. It's maybe no one. It's not one I can direct to you, Lisa. But so maybe bring it back. Might be Leslie that I want to ask this to. It would be interesting if we can get some more information, maybe as a briefing note, on how do we support women out of refuges? Whether that's the pathway that we would want to see them leave a refuge, or indeed if they are evicted. I think you've raised enough of a question, Councillor McPherson, that I fully understand that there will be unusual circumstances where difficult decisions have to be taken. But I think certainly I would benefit from understanding a little bit more about that, without in any way suggesting there's anything untoward with the procedures itself. I certainly think you've raised enough of a question. I wonder if we could maybe get some more information on that. Leslie, it's more one I think for you rather than one for Lisa. Are you comfortable to take that forward?
Yes, Councillor Kane, that's fine. I'll certainly work with Lisa on it, but we can take that forward. Yeah.
Are you happy with that as an approach, Councillor McPherson?
Yeah, Chair, absolutely. I think Stephen Clark's got a role in this, because when I got notification of this, I passed it on to Stephen Clark. I know Stephen's team dealt with it. So yeah, it's a really concerning issue that I really need more information on. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, if there's no more questions for Lisa, we do have others within this particular paper. Lisa, thank you very much for that. And can you please pass on committee's thanks to your staff for the remarkable work that they do and the fortitude that they show in dealing with what must be a very tough day at work. So thank you very much for all that, and pass on our thanks to the staff as well. Anything else? Thank you. Right, anything else in any of the other things? We've got McLaren, we've got Active Stirling, we've got Sistema in this one. There's nothing in the report that's jumping out at me. I mean, I know this is the sort of 6-month update of the report. I suspect, as you say in 2.3, all organisations report the pandemic is the biggest risk service. I think we are all still working through that. So, certainly with McLaren and Active Stirling, from the conversations I've had, it's pleasing to see that they're coping, if I can say that, and moving forward. And Sistema, I think they're doing really well. We've given Sistema some difficult questions in this committee over the years about getting out into the communities, but now they're in Stirling. It's fantastic, and now they're back in the network in person. They've sort of emerged from the pandemic very well, so that's pleasing to see. Right, so if that's it for item 15, we can say goodbye to Councillor McGill, who's departing with her conflict.
Thank you very much.
Which then takes Stirling Community Enterprise.
Thanks to everybody for the interesting meeting. Goodbye.
So Stirling Smith Art Gallery and Stirling Community Enterprise. Leslie.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I can introduce the report and talk to Stirling Community Enterprise, and Fiona can pick up on the Smith. So similar to the last report with regard to Stirling Community Enterprise, the no issues reported in terms of compliance, and we asked SCE to complete the standard template. I think our partnership with Stirling Community Enterprise continues to grow and continues to be very strong. They're a key player within the local employability partnership. And as noted in the report, we are working with them. They're now a delivery partner in terms of the Young Parents Guarantee Programme. So that's a significant step. Good to note that despite the pandemic, and you'll see again in the appendices that all but 3 of the KPIs that are applied to the SLA with Stirling Community Enterprise have been met, and the 3 that haven't are on amber, and there's very clear understanding as to why they haven't been met. Also included in the report is a document prepared by SCE themselves, which gives a review of their operation over the past 4 years. And I think the infographic on the opening page of that is really striking in terms of the numbers and the reach of that very significant partnership in the employability framework. Thank you.
Stirling Community Enterprise, I hear nothing but good things about them. You know, normally with organisations you'll hear a niggle here and there, but I don't. I mean, they do seem to be quite the success story, which is good to see. Is you know, they are performing exceptionally well with, of course, the amber indicators you mentioned. But no, I'm pleased to see that with Stirling Community Enterprise. Any questions on Stirling Community Enterprise? Then we'll talk about Smith Art Gallery. Nope. Okay. Fiona, do you want to say anything about Smith?
Chair, sorry, I couldn't get my hand up there quick. Apologies. Yeah, it's the Stirling Community Enterprise one here in relation to the page, the pair of page numbers, page 236, Leslie, in relation to the, obviously, it says the return to face-to-face delivery clear the backlog of demands for qualifications. The CSCS labourers card here. How long were these delayed? Because that concerns me that we were stopping people getting jobs. What kind of length was the delay in that?
I don't have the detail, Councillor McPherson, but I can certainly get that for you.
Okay, and Chair, it'd be good to know the geographical split of where these people were, they actually live. And I think we're not just supporting Ratborough kids, although they're really important as well. Like in the historic level, we saw, you know, Ratborough gets everything, everybody else has to fight for the crumbs. So do we know the kind of geographical split of many people were going into employment throughout the Stirling Council area?
That's one of the KPIs that we added to the SLA this year, actually last year, Councillor McPherson, just to note the geographical spread. And you'll see, I think it's on my papers 248, so it's this on the second page, the infographic of the SCE provided. You'll see the split there. So actually, over the 4 years, I think it's Stirling Town had the largest number of clients. You'll see it there, but we do collect that information every quarter from SCE.
It'd be good to get a more detailed breakdown. And obviously, it concerns me that people may have been not in post, missing out on jobs because we weren't back face to face. It just puzzled me that, you know, that we couldn't do this remotely. You know, because I employ people in the construction industry and getting a CSCS card running into Pearson's, and that's dead easy to do. So I don't understand why there's a delay in that, given you can do that quite easily remotely. So I need a bit of rationale for that, please. Thank you.
Okay. Fiona, the Smith.
Thank you, Convener. Fiona McLean, Culture and Events Manager. The Stirling Smith reopened in April 2021 and continues to offer high quality exhibitions, and it's developing its community programmes. Through external funding, primarily Museum Galleries Scotland, they've managed to run 2 family days, and they've delivered the Marvellous Museums project in partnership with Corton Primary School, developing the Young Force and Stirling Care Experience team. They've also managed to build a multi-purpose education and performance space in the garden. I'd just like to acknowledge that this report is brief, and a more detailed report will come to the next cycle, outlining new areas of programme, ideas for income generation and revised key performance indicators. This is something that we're currently working on with the Smith at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I hear the circus event, I won't call it a circus event, it was good apart from the rain. The party event that they had outside, apart from being one of the wettest days I think we had, but they all made a good show of it. It reminded me that the days of Hamish the Highland coup in the grounds of the Smith all these years ago. It was nice to see a focus on things going on in the grounds. Okay, so if there are no other questions, that concludes our business today. So thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Thank you. Bye.
Yes.